My name is Ethan Carter, and at 39 years old, I've built what most people would call a solid life. I work as a supply chain manager for a mid-sized manufacturing firm in the bustling outskirts of Denver, Colorado, where the Rocky Mountains loom like silent guardians over the city sprawl. Our home is a charming two-story craftsman-style house in a quiet suburb called Littleton, nestled among pine trees and winding streets that feel worlds away from the downtown hustle. We bought it 5 years ago, right after our wedding, and it's become our sanctuary, a place filled with the kind of everyday comforts that make you forget the chaos outside. There's the wraparound porch where we sip coffee on lazy Sunday mornings, watching the neighborhood kids ride their bikes, and the backyard with a small vegetable garden that Lauren tends to with surprising dedication, even though she's more of an artist than a green thumb. Lauren, my wife of 5 years, is a freelance photographer who specializes in lifestyle shoots. Think weddings, family portraits, and those glossy magazine spreads that capture the essence of Colorado's outdoor vibe. She's 36, with that effortless beauty that turns heads without trying. Long auburn hair that she often ties back in a loose ponytail, green eyes that sparkle when she laughs, and a smile that could melt the snow off those mountains. She works from home most days, converting our spare bedroom into a makeshift studio cluttered with cameras, lenses, tripods, and stacks of photo albums. I love coming home to the sound of her editing software humming in the background or the faint scent of her favorite lavender candle wafting through the halls. Our chocolate Labrador, Max, is always at her feet, his tail thumping rhythmically against the hardwood floors as if he's her personal cheerleader. Life with Lauren has always felt like a well-oiled machine. We met at a photography exhibit in downtown Denver. She was showcasing her work, and I was there on a whim after a long day at the office. Our first conversation was about the way light plays on the mountains at dusk, and by the end of the night, I had her number. Dating turned into engagement within a year, and marriage followed suit. We're the couple who hosts barbecues for neighbors, takes weekend hikes in Rocky Mountain National Park, and plans spontaneous road trips to places like Aspen or Boulder just to escape. She's the creative one, always dreaming up new projects while I handle the practical side, bills, repairs, the mundane stuff that keeps everything running smoothly. But lately, there's been this subtle undercurrent, like a faint hum in the background that you can't quite pinpoint. It started small, almost imperceptible. About 3 months ago, Lauren began locking her home office door whenever she stepped out, even if it was just to grab a snack from the kitchen. Client privacy, she'd say with a casual shrug when I asked about it once. You know how it is with sensitive photos. People don't want their family moments leaking out. It made sense. Photography involves trust, after all. But then there were the late-night phone calls she'd take in hushed tones, stepping outside onto the porch where the cold Colorado air would carry her whispers away. I'd catch fragments, words like timing and discreet, but she'd brush it off as business dealings with out-of-state clients. Our routines haven't changed much on the surface. Every morning, I wake up to the aroma of fresh coffee brewing in our stainless steel kitchen, where Lauren stands in her oversized sweater, pouring 2 mugs. Working late again today? She asks, her voice warm and familiar, handing me my cup with that signature smile. I nod, mentioning the endless meetings and supply chain disruptions that plague my job, and she listens attentively, offering encouragement like she always does. We share a quick breakfast, usually oatmeal with fresh berries from the garden or scrambled eggs if we're feeling indulgent, while Max begs for scraps under the table. Then I head out, kissing her goodbye at the door, her hand lingering on my arm just a second longer than usual. Work keeps me occupied from dawn till dusk. My office is in a modern building in the Denver Tech Center, surrounded by glass walls and buzzing with the energy of deadlines and deliveries. As a manager, I oversee a team of 12, coordinating shipments from suppliers across the country, ensuring everything arrives on time for our clients in the automotive industry. It's demanding but rewarding, and it pays well enough to afford our comfortable life, the mortgage, the occasional vacations to places like Hawaii or Europe, and even a small savings fund we've been building for future adventures, maybe even starting a family someday. Yet, that nagging feeling persists. Last week, I noticed her laptop screen flickering with unfamiliar tabs when I walked into the office unexpectedly. She quickly minimized them, claiming it was research for a new shoot. And then there's the mail, envelopes addressed to her that she intercepts before I can see them, stuffing them into her bag with a hurried explanation about invoices or contracts. I've chalked it up to her growing business. After all, success comes with its own set of stresses. But deep down, there's this quiet whisper of doubt, like the first crack in a frozen lake, warning that something might be shifting beneath the surface. Our evenings are still the highlight. I come home around 7, greeted by Max's enthusiastic barks and Lauren's hug at the door. We cook dinner together. Her specialty is grilled salmon with herbs from the garden, while I handle the sides like roasted vegetables or a simple salad. We talk about our days over wine, laughing about quirky clients or office politics. Lately, though, her stories have felt a bit rehearsed, like she's reciting lines from script. Had a great session with the Johnsons today, she'd say, describing a family photo shoot in vivid detail. But when I asked for specifics, like what poses they did or how the kids behaved, she changes the subject smoothly, steering us towards safer topics like weekend plans. We've installed new security cameras around the house recently, after a string of minor break-ins in the neighborhood. Nothing major, just some stolen packages and vandalized cars. But it put everyone on edge. The system is state-of-the-art, motion-activated, with live feeds accessible via an app on my phone. I check it occasionally during lunch breaks at work, more out of curiosity than concern. Seeing Lauren move through the house in her casual attire, perhaps dancing to music while editing photos or playing fetch with Max in the living room, always brings a smile to my face. It's a little ritual that reminds me of why I fell in love with her, the unfiltered, joyful side she shows when she thinks no one's watching. But even that has started to feel off. A couple of days ago, I glanced at the feed and saw her pacing the office, phone pressed to her ear, her expression tense in a way I've never seen. She hung up abruptly when Max barked at something outside, then sat down, staring at the wall for what felt like minutes. I didn't mention it when I got home. Instead, we had a normal dinner, watched a movie on Netflix, and went to bed like always. Lying there in the dark with her head on my chest and Max snoring at the foot of the bed, I told myself it was nothing. Stress from work, maybe. Or perhaps she was planning a surprise for our upcoming anniversary. Our social life adds another layer to this seemingly perfect picture. We have a close-knit group of friends, couples from work, neighbors, and a few from college days. Last weekend, we hosted a game night at our house, complete with board games, craft beers from local breweries, and Lauren's homemade appetizers. Everyone raved about her photography skills, asking her to capture moments from the evening. She obliged, snapping candid shots that she later posted on her professional Instagram, tagging me with hearts and captions like, "Nights like these with my favorite people." It all felt genuine, the laughter echoing through our living room until late. Yet, amid the fun, I caught her slipping away to check her phone more than once, her face illuminated by the screen in the dim light of the hallway. When I asked if everything was okay, she smiled and said it was just a client confirming a booking. I believed her, why wouldn't I? Trust has been the foundation of our relationship. We've shared everything: finances, dreams, even the painful parts like my parents' divorce when I was a kid or her stories about growing up in a small town in Kansas, where she learned to see the world through a lens to escape the monotony. Financially, we're stable. We have a joint checking account for household expenses and separate ones for personal spending. Mine includes an inheritance from my late uncle, who passed away 6 months ago, leaving me a sizable sum that we've earmarked for home improvements or travel. Lauren knows about it, but has never pressed for details. She's always been independent, proud of her earnings from photography gigs. Lately, though, I've noticed small discrepancies. Minor charges on our joint car that she attributes to equipment purchases like new filters or memory cards. Nothing alarming, just enough to make me double-check the statements. The neighborhood itself contributes to this sense of normalcy with a hint of unease. Littleton is safe, with community watch programs and friendly faces at the local farmers market every Saturday. We wave to the Smiths next door, chat with the elderly couple across the street about their grandkids, and even volunteer at the animal shelter where we adopted Max. But there have been those rumors, whispers about identity theft cases in nearby areas, people losing savings to online scams. I mentioned it to Lauren once, suggesting we beef up our passwords, and she agreed readily, even helping me set up two-factor authentication on our accounts. As I sit at my desk during a quiet afternoon at work, staring at spreadsheets filled with inventory numbers, my mind wanders back to her. The way she laughs at my terrible jokes, the warmth of her hand in mine during evening walks with Max along the South Platte River Trail. It's these moments that anchor me, making any fleeting doubts seem ridiculous. After all, marriage isn't perfect. It's about navigating the small waves together. But as the clock ticks toward the end of the day, I can't shake the feeling that one of those waves might be building into something larger, hidden just beyond the horizon of our everyday life. Our home is more than just a building. It's a repository of memories. The living room walls are adorned with Lauren's photographs, black and white prints of mountain vistas, colorful shots of Denver's street art, and intimate portraits of us on our honeymoon in Maui. The kitchen, with its granite countertops and hanging pots, has seen countless experiments, from her attempts at baking sourdough bread to my infamous chili cook-offs. Upstairs, our bedroom is a cozy retreat with a king-size bed draped in soft linens and a bay window overlooking the backyard, where fireflies dance on summer nights. Max, our 4-year-old lab, is the glue that holds it all together. He's energetic, loyal, and utterly devoted to Lauren, following her from room to room like a shadow. I remember the day we brought him home from the shelter. He was a puppy then, all paws and enthusiasm, and Lauren's eyes lit up as she cradled him. "He's perfect," she said, and in that moment, everything felt right. Now, he's part of our daily rhythm. Morning walks in the crisp Colorado air, afternoon play sessions in the yard, and evenings curled up on the couch during movie marathons. Work has its own rhythm, a steady drumbeat that contrasts with the creative freedom Lauren enjoys. My days are filled with conference calls, emails, and problem-solving sessions. Last month, we had a major supply issue with a vendor in California, delaying shipments and causing headaches all around. I stayed late several nights, coming home to find Lauren waiting with dinner warmed in the oven and a glass of whiskey ready. "You're my hero," she'd say, massaging my shoulders as I vented about the chaos. It's those gestures that reaffirm my love for her, making me wonder if my subtle suspicions are just paranoia born from stress. Social media plays a role in our lives too. Lauren's Instagram is a curated gallery of her work and our adventures. Hiking in Estes Park, skiing in Vail, or simple shots of Max chasing squirrels. I follow along, liking her posts and commenting with emojis that make her giggle. But I've noticed her follower count spiking lately, with comment from accounts I don't recognize, professional photographers, perhaps, or potential collaborators. She dismisses my questions with a wave, saying it's good for business. Finances, as I mentioned, are straightforward. We budget monthly, setting aside for retirement, emergencies, and fun. The inheritance from my uncle, a reclusive millionaire who made his fortune in real estate, added a buffer. He died unexpectedly from a heart attack, and the estate settled quickly, with me as the sole beneficiary. Lauren was supportive through the process, attending the funeral and helping with paperwork. "We'll use it wisely," she said, suggesting investments or a dream trip to Europe. I agreed, transferring the funds to my personal account for safekeeping. The security cameras were my idea, prompted by a news report about rising crime in suburbs. We chose a system with high-definition video, night vision, and cloud storage. Installation was quick, and now I can monitor the front door, backyard, and interior from anywhere. It's reassuring, especially when I'm away on business trips. Lauren teased me about being overprotective, but she appreciates the peace of mind too. As the days blend into one another, this life feels stable, almost idyllic. But that faint tension lingers, like the distant rumble of thunder on a clear day, hinting at a storm that might or might not arrive. I push it aside, focusing on the good. Our love, our home, our future. Little do I know, the crack is widening, and soon everything will change. The subtle shifts began to accumulate, each one like a pebble in my shoe, annoying but not yet debilitating. It started with her responses to my texts during the day, where once she'd reply promptly with emojis and updates about her shoots. Now, there were delays, sometimes hours, followed by curt messages like, busy, talk later. I rationalized it as her workload increasing. After all, her photography business was thriving, with more inquiries coming in from across the state. But then came the evening when I found her blouse in the laundry basket, carrying a faint trace of cologne that wasn't mine, a woody, musky scent that lingered in the fabric. When I mentioned it casually over dinner, she laughed it off. Oh, that must be from hugging a client after a session. You know how touchy-feely some families get. Her explanation seemed plausible, and I let it go, but the seed of unease took root. A few days later, my spare credit card went missing from the nightstand drawer where I kept it for emergencies. I searched the house top to bottom, even enlisting Max in the hunt, but it was nowhere to be found. Lauren suggested Max might have dragged it off as a toy, his penchant for socks extending to plastic. We both chuckled at the idea, but when I checked the online statement, there were no unauthorized charges yet. Still, the absence nagged at me, making me question if I was becoming forgetful or if something else was at play. She noticed my distraction that night as we prepared for bed, her hands gently rubbing my back. Don't worry about it, Ethan. It'll turn up. Her touch was comforting, but for the first time, it felt slightly performative. These incidents piled up slowly, eroding the foundation of our trust in tiny increments. Lauren started spending more time in her locked office, emerging only for meals or when Max needed a walk. Her laughter, once freely given, now seemed reserved for phone calls she took in private. I overheard snippets one afternoon when I came home early, words like, need more time, and can't risk it now, but she hung up quickly upon seeing me, plastering on a smile. Just negotiating a contract, she said, pulling me into a hug that felt warmer than usual, as if to compensate. The tension reached a boiling point on that fateful Monday when I decided to take a half day off, eager to surprise Lauren with flowers and concert tickets I'd scored for her favorite indie band playing in Boulder. Driving home through the winding roads of Littleton, the late morning sun filtering through the pines, I felt a strange mixture of excitement and nervousness. The kind you get when you're trying to recapture something that has quietly slipped away without you noticing exactly when or how. I wanted to see her face light up, to hear her genuine laugh instead of the polite one she'd been giving me lately. But before pulling into our driveway, I decided to check the new security cameras one last time, just to time my entrance perfectly and catch her in one of those unguarded, joyful moments, maybe laughing at something on her phone or dancing absent-mindedly while editing photos or throwing a tennis ball for Max across the living room floor. I pulled into a small turnout near the park, engine idling, and opened the app. The feed loaded quickly. At first, everything looked normal. The front porch empty, the mailbox closed, Max lying in a patch of sunlight by the bay window. Then the living room camera switched to motion detection, and there she was, Lauren, standing at the front door in her usual casual work-from-home outfit, soft gray leggings, oversized cream sweater, hair in a messy bun. She glanced quickly down the street in both directions, a small, almost imperceptible movement that made my stomach tighten for reasons I couldn't yet name. Then she opened the door. A woman stepped inside, late 20s, maybe early 30s, dressed far too formally for a casual visit. Charcoal pantsuit, white blouse buttoned to the collar, hair pulled back severely, carrying a slim leather portfolio and what looked like a high-end smartphone already in hand. No warm greeting, no hug, no small talk. Lauren simply stepped aside with practiced efficiency, closed the door behind them, and led the woman straight through the hallway toward her home office without a single word exchanged. The silence between them was deafening even through the tiny camera microphone. It wasn't the silence of strangers, but the silence of people who have done this many times before and don't need words anymore. I switched feeds frantically. The office camera, the one mounted high in the corner that I had insisted on installing, just in case, showed everything in crisp detail. Lauren approached the wall's safe, the one bolted behind a framed print of one of her own mountain photographs. I watched her fingers move across the keypad with complete confidence. The same confidence I had when I entered the code myself. She had always claimed she didn't know it, that I should change it regularly for security. Yet here, she was punching in the 6 digits smoothly, the lock clicking open with a soft beep that carried clearly through the feed. She reached inside and pulled out several thick folders, the ones containing my uncle's estate documents, copies of the will, bank statements from the inheritance account, even the original death certificate and probate papers I had kept locked away. One by one, she laid them out on the desk. The other woman sat down without hesitation, opened her portfolio, and began photographing each page methodically. Flip, flash, flip, flash. Lauren stood beside her, occasionally pointing to specific lines or paragraphs, her voice too low for the microphone to catch clearly, but her posture calm, professional, almost bored, the way someone might direct traffic or organize files in an office job. My hand started shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. This wasn't an impulsive theft. This was planned, rehearsed, executed with chilling precision. Every movement spoke of long preparation. The way Lauren checked the hallway first, the way she didn't hesitate at the safe, the way the woman knew exactly which documents to prioritize. I watched, frozen, as they worked for what felt like hours, but was actually only 14 minutes and 37 seconds according to the timestamp in the corner of the screen. At one point, Lauren even smiled, a small, satisfied curve of the lips, when the woman nodded approvingly at a particular page. When they finished, the woman slipped the phone back into her pocket, gathered the portfolio, and stood. They walked back to the front door together. Lauren checked the street again, left, right, left before opening it. There was no lingering embrace, no emotional farewell, just a quick, businesslike nod and a murmured same as usual next week. The woman stepped out, Lauren closed and locked the door, then leaned against it for a moment, exhaling slowly, as if releasing tension she hadn't shown while the other woman was present. Then she returned to the office, closed the safe, replaced the picture frame exactly as it had been, and sat down at her computer as though nothing had happened, as though she hadn't just handed over the keys to my financial future to a stranger. I sat in my car for a long time after the feed went still, staring at the frozen image of our empty living room. My chest felt tight, my breathing shallow. Betrayal wasn't just an emotion anymore. It was a physical weight pressing down on my ribs. This wasn't an affair. This was something colder, more calculated, more dangerous. And the worst part was realizing how perfectly she had played the role of loving wife while systematically dismantling the life we had built together. Instead of driving straight home in a blind rage or calling her immediately to demand answers, I made a sharp U-turn and headed toward Boulder. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, but my mind was strangely clear, the clarity that comes when shock burns away everything except the need to act. I needed facts, not confrontation. I needed someone who could see what I couldn't yet fully process. Nate's office was on the third floor of a nondescript building near Pearl Street Mall. He opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside without asking a single question. I handed him my phone, showed him the footage from beginning to end. He watched in complete silence, pausing only to zoom in on faces, hands, documents. When it finished, he leaned back, rubbed his jaw, and said quietly, "This isn't random, Ethan. This is professional." We spent the next 3 hours digging. First, he ran the second woman's face through several private facial recognition databases he had access to through his firm. Within 40 minutes, we had a match. Not a client, not a friend, not even a distant acquaintance. Her name was listed in multiple fraud investigation files as Alicia Grant, but that was only one of her current aliases. Nate cross-referenced it with public records, DMV photos, and old arrest reports from Nevada and Utah. The real connection emerged slowly and brutally. Alicia had been photographed multiple times in the company of a woman whose face matched Lauren's exactly, but under the name Rebecca Voss. Nate pulled up more. Rebecca Voss, age 41, born in Reno, Nevada. No criminal record in Colorado under that name, because she had never used it here. Instead, she had built a clean identity as Lauren Hayes, freelance photographer, over the past 5 years. Before that, she had operated under at least four other names in Arizona, Nevada, California, and Oregon. The pattern was consistent. Target financially stable, recently bereaved, or newly wealthy men. Establish a romantic relationship. Gain access to financial documents and accounts. Extract assets gradually through wire transfers, forged signatures, or, in the most sophisticated cases, manipulated estate documents after a death. In two previous cases, the victims had died under suspicious circumstances labeled as accidents. In the others, they had simply lost everything and been left too humiliated or confused to pursue full prosecution. Then came the part that made the room spin. Nate cross-checked marriage records. Our wedding certificate listed Lauren's maiden name as Hayes, but the social security number attached to it belonged to a woman who had died in a car crash in Kansas at age 17 in 2004. Ghosting, the term Nate used, a technique used by sophisticated identity thieves to assume the life of someone who died young, before digital footprints became permanent. But the deepest cut was personal. Uncle Raymond hadn't died of natural causes by coincidence. Nate pulled up coroner's notes from the small-town hospital in Montana where he had passed. Officially heart attack. But the timeline aligned too perfectly. Raymond had started feeling ill shortly after Lauren's first visit to his ranch the previous summer. A surprise weekend getaway she had insisted on. Toxicology reports had been requested, but never fully pursued because there was no obvious foul play. Nate looked at me gravely. She didn't just want the money, Ethan. She wanted you out of the picture eventually. And then, the pivot that changed everything. I remembered something Raymond had told me 2 months before he died, during one of our last phone calls. He had sounded unusually serious, almost paranoid. I added something to the will, kid. A little insurance policy. If anything smells wrong, fraud, coercion, accident that doesn't add up, the whole estate goes straight to the National Center for Victims of Financial Fraud. No exceptions. I had laughed it off at the time, thinking it was just his eccentric old man caution. But he had been right. Nate and I spent another hour locating the safety deposit box key I had forgotten about in my sock drawer at home. Inside was the original codicil, signed, notarized, dated. It explicitly stated that any proven fraud, identity theft, or suspicious death surrounding the beneficiary would trigger automatic redirection of all assets to the charity. Raymond had suspected something even then. He had protected me without ever saying a word that would alarm me. That codicil was now my shield, and the weapon that would turn the hunter into the hunted. Armed with the codicil and the irrefutable evidence Nate had compiled, I contacted Detective Ramirez from the Denver Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit that same afternoon. I sent him the full video footage, Nate's detailed report on Rebecca's aliases and history, and scanned copies of the secret codicil from my uncle's safety deposit box. Ramirez listened without interruption as I explained everything in a voice that stayed steady only because I forced it to. He didn't waste time on sympathy or questions. He simply said, "Sit tight. We're moving on this now." They moved with impressive speed. Within hours, plainclothes officers were positioned at Denver International Airport. Rebecca, still presenting as Lauren Hayes to the world, was flagged at the security checkpoint for her flight to San Jose, Costa Rica. She was using yet another borrowed identity, this one belonging to a woman who had passed away in her early 20s in the Midwest. The passport she carried was mine, the one she had taken from the safe along with the estate documents. When they approached her at the gate, she didn't run or protest dramatically. She simply went pale, her calculated composure cracking for the first time I could imagine, and allowed herself to be handcuffed without a word. The arrest was quiet, almost anticlimactic, exactly the opposite of the storm she had quietly built inside our home for years. Her accomplice, Alicia Grant, or whatever name she was using that week, was picked up 2 days later in a nondescript motel outside Phoenix. She had been attempting to deposit a forged check drawn on one of the accounts Rebecca had slowly drained over the previous months. The chain of evidence was airtight. Bank records, the photographed documents from our safe, travel itineraries, and now the codicil that sealed the motive and triggered the asset freeze. Most of the transferred funds were recovered within weeks. My uncle's inheritance, the emergency savings I had quietly built, even small amounts she had siphoned for business expenses. The estate documents were returned intact, and the charity Raymond had named in his safeguard clause received the bulk of what remained untouched. I didn't keep it all. The thought of profiting from such betrayal felt wrong. Instead, I followed through on his wishes and redirected a significant portion directly to the National Center for Victims of Financial Fraud. The trial came 4 months later, sitting in that courtroom 12 feet from the woman I had once loved, now known officially as Rebecca Voss. I watched her face as I testified. There was no remorse in her eyes, no tears, no pleading glance. Just the same cool calculation I had finally learned to recognize, assessing whether I could still be useful, even in defeat. She received 15 years. Alicia got 8. The judge's gavel fell like the closing of a very long, very painful chapter. Life afterward was quieter, slower to heal. The house in Littleton felt too large at first, echoing with absence. I kept Max close. His steady presence, his uncomplicated loyalty, became my anchor during the nights when memories surfaced uninvited. I sold the home office equipment she had used, donated her photography gear to a local nonprofit for at-risk youth, and slowly turned the spare room into a small home gym. Routine helped. Morning runs with Max along the Platte River Trail, evenings on the porch watching the Rockies fade into twilight. The simple act of making coffee for one. Now I volunteer twice a week at the Victim Center. I sit with people who have lost homes, retirements, entire senses of self to the same kind of predators Rebecca embodied. I listen to their stories, share mine when it helps, and teach them the red flags I once ignored. The locked doors, the vague explanations, the too perfect smiles. Some days it hurts to relive it. Other days it feels like purpose. I've started speaking at small community events. Nothing dramatic, just honest talks about trust, vigilance, and how love doesn't have to mean blindness. Evenings are the hardest and the softest at the same time. Max and I sit on the porch swing, the mountains dark silhouettes against the sky. I no longer check the cameras obsessively, but I keep the system running quietly in the background. Not out of paranoia, but as a reminder. I once believed love made us invincible, or at least forgiving. I was wrong. Love makes us honest, exposed, human. And sometimes that honesty is the only thing that survives when everything else has been a carefully constructed lie. The moral is simple, but it cuts deep. In a world full of illusions and perfectly staged lives, check the footage. Not to laugh, not to spy, but to see clearly. Because the truth, however brutal, is the only thing that can pull you out before the trap closes for good. It might save your money, your future, your sense of self. And yes, sometimes it saves your heart, even if it has to break first to do it.